Welcome, friends. This is another opportunity that I have come with an encouragement for you. And the reason why it's important for you to follow what I have to share with you today is that it's going to be a game changer for many of you, and it's going to help you to understand the ways of God, how God operates. And most times, when you know the way God operates, it helps you a lot. And have you been into that situation whereby you begin to wonder if God is existing or God ever existed? And then there are times that quietly in our hearts you begin to ask and say, if God is alive, how could this happen to me? You remember that there was the issue about Mary and Martha when their brother, the one that Jesus Christ loved, and then when he died, and then there was a statement that Martha made and said, "Say, Lord, if you um, were here, this wouldn't have happened, you know." But then the Lord said that he shouldn't worry; He is in control, and that was how Lazarus came back to life. One thing that you need to understand with the ways of God is that when you understand the ways of God, you won't be carried away with the momentary and or the temporal, setbacks that you have in life. Because generally, before you advance, there will have to be a setback. Any good high jumper who wants to jump may have to first of all go back a little bit, and then they gain momentum as they run from that back position, and then they make advancement. So most times in life, when you want to make an advancement, there will be, this, setback. There's this, going backward. Then you now move forward, and then you make your leap in life, and then of course make your major progress. Uh, One thing with Moses is that Moses understood the ways of God. And so Caleb also understood the ways of God. Joshua also understood the ways of God. But the children of Israel never understood the ways of God. So they know the arts of God, but they didn't know the ways of God. And because they didn't know the ways of God, any little pain they begin to murmur. Any little pain they began to murmur. Any little ache they began to murmur. Any little defeat they began to murmur because they didn't understand the ways of God. But I'd like to let you know that when you understand the ways of God and the total processes that God walks by, you will not be intimidated by the little setbacks, by the disappointment, by the broken marriage. You will not be disappointed. Why? Or maybe by the loss of a loved one, you will not be disappointed because you understand the ways of God. There are things that you need to understand when God is silent, and when you have prayed and God is silent, and then it looks like God is not, speaking. I want to let you know something. If God is not speaking, number one, if God is not speaking, then He is preparing to act. When you are in the boxing ring and then you are actually in the action, you are not talking. You don't talk. Action speaks louder than voice. So when God is silent, it's because He wants to act, make an act, and that will speak louder than even His speaking. And so I want you to understand those moments where it looks like heaven is silent and the night is at the pitch dark, and then you are not getting a headway. Maybe you have written an exam for a couple of times and you're not passing. You're not gaining promotion when others have gained promotion and they have gone. And then you're wondering, is God still alive? I want to tell you to know that God wants to act. I'll give you an example. You remember the case of um, the Israelite when they got to the Red Sea, and then they wanted to be sure. They wanted to cross, and they looked at their back and they saw the Egyptians coming, and then they looked at the front. They saw this vast sea. Nobody has crossed over the sea. You may need an aid to go through or go over the sea, but here there was no aid. And then they were murmuring and they were complaining, and God told Moses to do something, and that was the breakthrough. So anytime you're not hearing, God is not answering you, it means that God wants to carry out an action, and those action actually speaks louder than His voice. And so wait for those moments that God will begin, to act. And you need to also understand that when God is silent, number two, when God is silent, you will need to understand that He wants to announce you. Anytime God is silent, it means God wants to announce you. You look at the case of Hannah. Hannah has been praying. She was praying, a couple of times, and then there was no answer. She was barren. There was no child. But do you know the intention of God? God wanted to announce a prophet called Samuel. And so all of the noise around, you're barren, you can give birth to a child, and then be mocked by his mate in the house, and all of those times were noise from the enemy. And because God has a plan, and the plan is to announce a prophet. Do you know that among all the prophets, the priests that served, Samuel was unique? Because at the end of his ministry, he made an announcement. Is there anybody here whom I took advantage of? Is there anybody that took their wife? Is there anybody that took their money, deceptively? Is there anything like that? And there was no one who could accuse him of anyone. A major prophet in Israel, that was Samuel. God wanted to announce him, but before he came, there was so much noise on the fact that the mother bear, didn't have a child, and for a long time. That is one of the ways God, operates. Now, number three, when God is silent, I want you to understand, when God is silent, it's because He wants to reveal Himself. He wants to reveal Himself. You remember the case of the Hebrew boys, and then those Hebrew boys, they needed to bow, to an image, as the government commanded, as the authority of that day commanded. And they said, no, we wouldn't bow to any image. And you know what? They asked God, they prayed, and then they believed God that God was going to make the judgment to go their favor. But when when the judgment came, the judgment didn't favor them. The judgment came against them. The judgment was disadvantaged to them. Because when the judgment was passed, it was that they would be put into the fire. And while they were heating up the fire, they were also praying, God, would you not let this fire stop burning? Would you not stop this fire? And God didn't answer. God was silent. The fire was burning. And when they increased it 7 times, God was still silent. And it looks like that was going to be the end of the road for them. But yet, they believed that He that they trusted was going to deliver them. And if He doesn't, they were ready to die for what they believed in. I'd like to let you know, there are situations, there are things that is happening around your life, but because of what God intends to do, He had allowed all of those silent moments just for the last moment to reveal Himself. Do you know when they put them in the fire? The king said, I saw one like the Son of Man. He saw the 4th person, and he said, I saw one like the Son of Man. Now, one of the things that you need to understand is this. When they got into the fire, nothing happened to them. Even those who threw them into the fire were consumed. They were consumed. But those who entered the fire and made contact with the fire, there was nothing lost. They didn't die. Nothing got burned. Their clothes weren't burned. And then the king said, I saw someone like the Son of Man. So most times when situations become so tough and God is silent, and actually you could perceive that God is silent, there's something that I want you to understand. God wants to reveal Himself. Not just to you, He wants to reveal Himself, even to your enemy. He wants to reveal Himself to the whole world, that He is in control. So most times when there are silence, when there are moments where it looks like God is silent, it's not actually that He's silent. He wants to reveal Himself. Number 4, when God is silent, I want you to understand that when God is silent, He wants to bring the bigger picture. He wants to bring the bigger picture. And that's just God for you. Now, you remember that the times where the Israelites were to face Goliath, and Goliath for 40 days came and threatened them. And then there was nobody that could stand. There was nobody. But God was preparing for the bigger picture. And at that time, David showed up. And when David showed up, though he also wanted to announce David also through that particular scenario, when David showed up, God demonstrated His power. And David, the one who threatened, when he came down, every other thing became silent. So most times God wants a bigger picture. Now, I also let you know this. You remember the life of Joseph. You remember that Joseph was sold First of all, he was kept in the pit by his brothers and to die there. God didn't show up. Even when he prayed, God didn't show up. And after a while, they decided, okay, let's not kill him like that. Let's sell him off. And when they were selling him off, I believe he prayed and said, God, let these people not, pay for me and then I'll be carried to a strange land. But God didn't answer that prayer. He allowed him to be sold to a strange land. And when he got to the strange land, he also had another experience again. He was accused wrongly of sleeping, with the general's wife. And you know what? God didn't show up. When the judgment was passed and he was condemned to go to the prison, God didn't show up. But I believe that in all of those occasions, Joseph was praying, but God didn't show up. But you know where God showed up? God showed up at the time where the exact time where he wanted to manifest the purpose for all of this, for his silence. He wanted to show up. When that time came, he was recognized right from the prison, and then he became second in command. But that was not actually what God was, where God was going. God wanted to save a generation. If God had saved Joseph while he was in the pit, he would have been saved and only him would have been saved. But because he allowed Joseph go through all of those moments, he saved a generation. You remember that Jacob and the other members of the family were the ones who came back into Egypt and lived in Egypt. It was from there that this population that came into Egypt developed. So most times when you begin to cry and say, Lord, relieve me of my pain, no, God remembers the big picture, that through this many will be delivered. You remember the case of Jesus when he was at the moment and he said, Lord, take this cup from me, nevertheless let your will be done. Do you know that the will of God that was done was actually the bigger picture? If Jesus had been delivered from the hands of those who ferocious wolves who came against him, if he had been delivered miraculously, maybe a power came from heaven and delivered them, maybe killed his enemies and then he lived, do you know that you and I won't be saved? So God was, allowing those moments of silence for the bigger picture, and the bigger picture was the salvation of the world. If Jesus had been, saved, it would have been Jesus alone that had been saved. But because Jesus was not saved, he actually made a provision for the whole world to be saved. That is one thing with God. So when God is silent, most times he's preparing for the bigger picture. And you will need to understand that these are the moments that you will need to, some of these truths that you need to take, or take them, though hard, but yet you need to just believe. Now, this is what I want to leave with you. When God is silent, I want you to know and to do one thing: trust. TRUST. That's the only thing you got to do. That's the only thing you have to do. You just have to trust him. And then trust leave you at a place whereby you are no longer depending on your own ability, your education. You are not believing in your power, but you are just trusting that God is in total control. Is in total control. There's a song that when my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. Lead me to the rock that is higher than I. And the truth is that there is a rock that is higher than I, and that rock is Jesus Christ. And then most times when you're confused, most times when everything is silent, he is with you. I encourage you again, stay on. Those silence means that God is coming in a bigger way as far as that matter is concerned. You're not going to be consuming it. There's always light at the end of the tunnel. You will not be consumed. You must just trust God that this is your moment and the time for your deliverance has come. God has you in his mind and he is out to bless you. Just be set for it. The Lord bless you. The Lord keep you. If this has blessed you, I want you to just, click on the like button, and then this video can be made available and it can bless many people, especially those who are already been discouraged already and those who are about to take their life. I want you to know that you shouldn't do that because God got you covered. Also, not just that, if you're just new to our channel, I want you to click on the subscription button and of course the bell. And then when we put up stuff like this, you will really be blessed and notified that stuff like that exists. The Lord keep you and the Lord bless you.